Star Wars 7x7 episode 1842 today, recapping most of the Star Wars activity at day 2 of San Diego Comic-Con. Let's go! Hey Rebel Riser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode. And yes, there were 5, count them 5, major panels related to Lucasfilm and Star Wars at San Diego Comic-Con on Friday, day 2 of the big event. And that's really the big Lucasfilm day. There's nothing else happening major at all with Lucasfilm for the rest of San Diego Comic-Con. No other big reveals, no other big panels. I mean, there are other Star Wars related things, but as far as news and announcements go, today, or yesterday, today since I'm recording it on Friday, but Friday was the big day. And so I'm going to take you through 4 of the 5 panels that happened, and on Sunday's episode of the show, we'll talk about that 5th panel, that being the Lucasfilm Publishing panel. But first, we're going to talk about the other 4, which would be the Lucasfilm Collecting panel with Brian Merton, and then the Hasbro Star Wars panel. Also, I think we might touch briefly on the Funko panel as well. This is sort of an unscheduled check-in, but why not? And we'll also talk about the audiobook behind the scenes panel, and finally the Step Into Our Stories panel from ILM X Lab. And at the end of the episode, we're also going to have a visit from the Department of Corrections about the Sith Troopers, so stay tuned for that. But first, let's immediately rule out the panel with Brian Merton and tell you that there was no big news coming out of that panel whatsoever, aside from it just being a generally enjoyable panel by all reports, and the official Star Wars blog reports that the Sith Trooper figure that they created is really awesome. And that was basically the same thing that got said about the Funko Pop creation for the Sith Trooper, and the fact that they had to go into a special room to view all this reference material, including screen-used props from The Rise of Skywalker, and that also meaning a screen-used helmet for the Sith Trooper to make sure that they got their design, as close to correct as possible. And it sounds like it was dead on to hear, all the talk about it. But they were very careful not to reveal anything. And it doesn't seem like much of a surprise, but there was nothing new revealed at the behind-the-scenes audiobook panel that happened as well. Although I gather, again, it was a very interesting panel, including Kevin Scott and Janina Gavankar and Kat Tabor, and moderated by Nick Martorelli, who is a producer for Penguin Random House Audio and who's been a guest on the show a couple of times as well. A very awesome gentleman. And Kevin's been on the show also, too. One of these days we'll have Kat Tabor and Janina Gavankar on here, I certainly hope. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm sure it will down the line. Fingers crossed, we'll reach out. Anyway, so they talked about the process of recording and how they produce those things, very similar to what happened during that version of the panel at Celebration Chicago. As far as the Hasbro Star Wars panel goes, no new Rise of Skywalker news, and actually rather shockingly, no new news about Triple Force Friday that's happening in October this year, where not only are they debuting new toys from the Rise of Skywalker, but because of the whole Triple Force Friday thing, they're also going to be debuting stuff from The Mandalorian and also from Jedi Fallen Order. But yeah, again, nothing from Hasbro on that. And so this does seem to be falling in line with the rather secretive nature that they are trying to maintain around the Rise of Skywalker. Not like they don't try to maintain secrets as far as other Star Wars properties go, like, when The Force Awakens was coming out, and when The Last Jedi and Rogue One and Solo. It just seems like they are really trying to ratchet this one down a little bit tighter than anything else that they have done in the past. So when you consider those 4 panels and how there was precious little news that came out of them, then by comparison, the Step Into Our Stories panel for ILM X Lab was like a wealth of riches by comparison. And yet, there still wasn't a heck of a lot that was shared. First of all, they still did not reveal a release date for episode 2 of Vader Immortal. What they did share was concept art, 3 images in particular, one of which looks like Vader is nearby a tomb and there is a statue on top of the tomb, and maybe it's a statue, maybe it's a mummified version of whoever it is. It puts you in mind of Lady Corvax's husband, or perhaps Lady Corvax or herself. It's a little bit hard to tell from the photos, at least from this distance. And that would be the couple who tried to save Mustafar when it was invaded. And of course, when Lady Corvax's husband died, she tried to revive him using the Bright Star, and things went terribly awry, and it's responsible for the state in which we find Mustafar today. And there was another piece of concept art depicting Vader with the Black Bishop. That's the character that was helping him out in episode 1, trying to boot up the Eon engine, this thing that's going to possibly bring Padme back from the dead. At least that's the theory. And apparently we're going to find out more about the Black Bishop and what its role is in this whole situation. We're also going to get to explore more of Vader's castle and the underground regions within it sounds like. And reconfirmed, but something that we kind of knew from previous events, that as opposed to episode 1 being more focused on lightsaber training, episode 2 is going to delve into Force use. And so you, as the character in Vader Immortal, are going to be using the Force in Vader Immortal episode 2. And that really is as much as you need to know about the 4 panels plus the Funko panel, so 5, that happened on Friday at San Diego Comic-Con. Again, I will talk about the publishing panel on Sunday's episode of the show here, and I'm going to take a quick break, and as I promised, we'll do the Department of Corrections bit about the Sith Trooper right afterwards, so stay tuned for that. This episode is brought to you by Constant Contact, the premier email marketing solution for small businesses and organizations. I've used their service since 2003, and over the past decade and a half, I've watched them evolve, make the product simpler, more powerful, easy to use, and do everything that they can to help train people to use the product more effectively and for it to work with other forms of marketing like social media, for example. So check out sw7x7.com/email to learn more about Constant Contact and start a free trial. Once again, that is sw7x7.com/email for a free trial. Welcome back. All right, so from the Department of Corrections, I had said that there was no descriptive plaque accompanying the Sith Trooper in the display at San Diego Comic-Con. Well, it turns out that I had just been looking at photos that did not depict the plaque, but there is a plaque, and this is what it says about the Sith Trooper. It says, in its ultimate push towards galactic conquest, the First Order readies an army of elite soldiers that draw inspiration and power from a dark and ancient legacy. So there you go. That is the plaque that accompanies the Sith Trooper at San Diego Comic-Con. And there you go. That's going to do it for today's episode of the show. Again, on tomorrow's show, we'll talk about the Lucasfilm Publishing panel and all the reveals from there. They had something like a dozen authors on that panel and shared a lot of interesting information. As far as today's show goes, thank you again to Jonna Marie Macias, who is Blue Jag Eyes on Twitter, JAIG, Blue Jag Eyes on Twitter, as well as the Star Wars Underworld, that's the SWU, and Dominic Jones, who was tweeting on their behalf from San Diego Comic-Con 2. Thank you both so much for sharing all of these wonderful tweets and images and information from San Diego Comic-Con, as well as everybody else who's tweeting their faces off there. It's really awesome for everybody who doesn't get to be there like myself, and hopefully for you too if you're not able to be there, and hopefully I'm summing it up nice and neatly for you. But anyway, again, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me, as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox. It is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other related Star Wars items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2019 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.